He has always made a way. It started then. Um, my sister's ex mother in law had a house that sat empty, and because she had gotten married and moved, so I moved in there and didn't have a job, didn't have a driver's license, and didn't know how I was going to work. I was in a really bad neighborhood. It was in a really rough neighborhood. If you know anything about Columbus, it was very close to Children's Hospital. And so anybody who knows anything about Columbus, Ohio, knows what I'm talking about when I say Columbus and Ann. It's a rough neighborhood. But there I was, and I felt protected. And I was protected. I never had a single problem. I was protected. My prayer life was so strong, and I didn't fear. I didn't fear. I was still smart enough to be aware that there are dangers all around me, but I wasn't scared, and I felt protected because I was. And okay, so things are going great, and I felt great. And I started looking for work, and the Columbus Dispatch and a Dairy Queen job came through on the same day. Same day, started working both jobs on the same day. Ended up finding a small apartment in a better area for my son to start, just in time for my son to start kindergarten. Like I said, he continued to make a way. He always did. Um, from there we went like we had the cute little apartment, and it was right behind the Dairy Queen that I was working at, and I'd given up the dispatch delivery. That just worked out long enough for me to make enough money to get out of that area. And then I was able to stop doing that and just work at Dairy Queen. um, Now, so while I, right before I moved though from that house, I had a friend that needed a place to stay. And I told her, no drinking in my house. Of course, you and your daughter can come and stay with me, but there's no alcohol at my house. And she respected that. When I was going to move, she didn't want to move to an area and spend as much money as I was willing to spend for a better area to have a better school for my son that was getting ready to start kindergarten. So she was supposed to find somewhere else to go, and she did not. And of course, her and her daughter came with us. It was supposed to be temporary. And I thought I'd let her have some beers on the porch. Just because I don't drink doesn't mean that she can't drink. And I let her have those beers on the porch, and eventually had a beer with her, which led to more beers because it was an old familiar feeling. It was an old comfortable feeling. It felt like an old friend, but it wasn't. It's an old enemy disguised as an old friend. Because when you let a little bit of the darkness in, it will eventually just take over. It will every time take over. And I had years of this going back, but always praying and always trusting on God, and then going back into the world and not putting him first and not keeping him first. I even got to a point where I started college, and was making dean's list, and felt better than I had felt in my entire life. Um, I had stopped drinking again and quit smoking marijuana, which at the time was really all I was doing. And I just stopped. I didn't try. I just stopped because I just felt good and I was just happy. And I went from the best year and a half of my life to the worst year and a half of my life. And it started with dabbling again with a relationship with friends. And it turned into my father dying, my granddaughter almost dying, and then me relying on those substances again and going into the darkest depression of my life. Um, and that's when I started to pray the hardest. I started to pray again every morning, every single morning. I went to do through all of that. I had to, after my dad died, and I really lost it in 2012, um, and started to drink because I couldn't not stop being sad without drinking, but the drinking was making me even more depressed. depressed, and I was really stuck in a dark, dark, vicious cycle. And went to treatment, trying to avoid going to prison through DUIs, and didn't think that there was much that they could tell me that I didn't already know. The I was What I was doing in college while I was at college was social service, corrections, and criminal justice. I could have taught the classes that they were teaching me. What I couldn't teach, what couldn't be taught in any class, was why I hadn't cared about myself up to that point. And up to that point, I hadn't cared about myself, and that hadn't probably when I if I had stayed with God, maybe I would have figured that out. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered ever. But I don't know. Me going back and trying to be part of the world and slipping back into the world several times through the years um, has, I would say, definitely delayed what could have been. But I still know that my life is still not as bad as it would have been had I not had God in my life since 1996. I don't believe I would still be alive. If I was still alive, I think I'd probably be in prison or living on the streets or something. I know my kids wouldn't talk to me if and if I had them, you know. I'd believe all of that to be 100% true. Because if I told you, when I ever get a chance to tell all of my different stories, um, you'll wonder how in the world someone didn't step in and look out for my children. And they were my whole motivation for ever doing better, though. And while I went to treatment, I got new motivation on I love me. It turns out I love me. I don't know that I ever felt that a whole lot growing up. I was born a disappointment to my parents. I was supposed to be a boy. I was supposed to fix their marriage, and I wasn't capable of making either of those things happen. But they were fully aware to me growing up, and I think impacted me in a lot of ways. I saw a sign a couple weeks ago that impacted me in the opposite way. And I hope it impacts you in this way too, because it's as true for you as it is for me. My parents might not have been thrilled the day I was born. Yours probably were. Most parents were. Most of them were. So I think that's why it was a little more difficult for me to swallow that pill. But you know who was happy the day I was born? The angels danced. The angels danced the day I was born. The angels danced the day you were born. You're beautiful and you're perfect. The only thing missing is Jesus. If there's anything missing in your life, it's Jesus. He will fill the hole. He will fix the hole. He will make you whole again and again and again. Thank you for hearing my story. May God bless you and keep you.